Hi, my name is Matt Kietrungren, and this is my final project for Film and Media Studies 189 MS Sports Media with Akil Goswami. Now, the topic of my presentation is on sports fandom, and if sports fandom is in and of itself a religion. I'm going to try and prove this through 2 interviews with massive UCSB men's basketball Gaucho sports fans, and through talking to them, I wanted to get to know them a little bit better, their ideas of fandom, how fandom has helped them form a community, and what fandom to this Gauchos team has really helped them form outside of just being at games and whatnot. So really just trying to uncover that, and hopefully through that interview, through some background history to sports fandom, and through some general appeal to religion as well, we can uncover this question together.
Now, to kick off our understanding of where sports fandom comes from, let's take a look at 2 essays. Let's start off with Norbert Elias's essay, The Genesis of Sport. Now, this essay talks about the rise of Spartan culture and the battle amongst the ancient Greeks, along with the Romans developing warrior battles amongst their gladiators. Now, from this development of violently staged battle, these contests drew in large sums of fans who would come to watch certain fighters compete against each other, paying large sums of money to cheer on certain warriors and watch this violent spectacle take place. Now, the second essay that I want to refer back to is Tony Collins' Sport in Capitalist Society. Now, in this essay, he talks about modern sport being at the turn of the 20th century and how at this turn they started to draw in large spectators and financial draw through sports like horse racing and cricket, instituting systems of standardized betting and commercialization. Now, these systems made it easy for fans and spectators to invest their own money and effort into certain horses, players, or teams, which in turn developed into emotional investments of time and emotions toward these entities in sport because of a personal investment of money and time and expecting rewards and winnings from it. Now, getting into sports fandom in the modern world, we can see that typically a lot of fans will, attend physical arenas and spaces to enjoy sport. They will attend these places to be around a certain community of people whose ideals align with them. Many times it's, supporting specific players or supporting specific teams. Many times these people will act a little hostile or aggressive towards other people who do not align with their ideals or teams, and they want to be, again, around that sense of community and just feel that sense of community, which has a lot of parallels to religion. Now, with certain religious examples, a few things that we can look at that are similar to sports fandom are the fact that religious members will attend physical spaces such as churches or mosques or synagogues on a weekly or monthly basis. Many times people will join these religious groups or they will join religions in general to find a sense of community, whether that's, to find themselves or be around people whose ideals align with them. Many people want to find a sense of community and to be a part of something, to be part of something similar to a family almost, to feel comfortable within. And lastly, a lot of times religious members will worship certain people or figures. Some of these examples could include God or Jesus in many cases, and similarly a lot of sports fans will worship certain people or figures like, certain players, for example. So on the UCSB basketball team, there's Jason Fontenette, who we'll get into a little bit later. So my theory that I am going to try and prove in this project is that sports fandom in and of itself is a religion. I am going to try and prove this through the similarities between sports fans and religious goers, which primarily include attending physical spaces such as sports arenas as religious goers go to churches and mosques, or forming communities such as how religious goers attend prayer groups and how sports fans will attend fan watch parties. And lastly, looking at behavior at certain events, such as how fans form an us against them identity when seeing those who don't align with their ideals of their supported team or players and how they see that as wrong, which is similar to how many times religion is exclusionary of other practices and beliefs. My hope is that by the end of this video essay, you will see that the similarities are so evident between the two cultures that our modern world will have no other choice but to consider sports fandom a religion. Now, the first example I want to look at is the behavior of sports fans attending UCSB basketball games. And the first example I want to show you is an example of the student section at UCSB basketball games cheering on their team after a score. Now, in this example, we can see that the student section all move with exuberant, powerful body language after their gaucho, Colin Smith, who is not pictured in this video, hits a three. Now, not only are all these fans congregated in one central area together, similarly to how religious members will attend a physical space of prayer and worship together and congregate together, they fist pump alongside one another and cheer as a group in support of their players and their team to win. So their dedications as fans can be rewarded and they can all be happy together, which is very similar to how religious members will cheer on their respected figures of worship to bring them health and personal success. Now, for our second example, let's take a look at a video example where these fans are working together to taunt and be exclusionary towards members of an opposing community. For context, this chant was intended towards number 2 of the opposing team in the LMU Lions, who had just gotten benched by his head coach after missing his 6th straight shot against the Gauchos. Now, in this example, we can see the UCSB Gaucho basketball fans taunting members of the other team through verbal chants. Now, these chants are meant to cause further frustration and berate players that do not align with the goal of supporting the UCSB Gauchos and ensuring the Gauchos come home with a win. In many regards, this is similar to how many religious members are exclusionary towards members of other religions or people whose religious ideals conflict with their own, many times disrespecting or not acknowledging people of other religious groups, which has led to unfortunate ideals in our modern world, such as anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. Now, getting into our interviews. Now, the first interview that I'm going to be conducting is with the Blue Guy, who is also known by his actual name of Evan DiCarlo. He is a leader of the UCSB Surge, which again is the student section of UCSB's basketball games at home. And I chose to interview him to see his experiences as a Gaucho fan, what it's meant for him, and how his experiences might be able to tie to religious experience.
Hi, my name is Matt Rungrit, and today I'm going to be interviewing the Blue Guy from the UC Santa Barbara Surge. So, Blue Guy, you just want to give us like a quick 10-second introduction to yourself and why you enjoy doing this so much?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a sports fan my whole life. Never really got into basketball before coming here. And then I saw this opportunity to really kind of lead something, a large group of students to get excited about the game, and I was super thrilled. So it's been such a fun time just being able to support the other students here that are playing.
That's great. Well, the first question I want to ask you is, what benefit do you think you get out of a strong devotion to this team as the Gauchos are warming up behind us?
I think having a strong devotion to team, and specifically in college sports, like when it's your own school, it gives you a sense of pride. I'm proud of the accomplishments that have gotten me here at UCSB, and I'll forever be proud of the things I do in the future because I'm here at UCSB. So I think even just supporting sports at the very base level really just gets me in touch with I love my school, I love the spirit, I'm super happy to be here.
Great. The next thing I want to ask you, how are you typically supporting this team, whether it's at games here or at home, and how much time do you typically find yourself doing so?
I mean, I've been here to every game that's been at home. Here supporting them, I lead all the chants and try and get as many students as possible up and off their feet. At home, like over when I was at home during Thanksgiving break, I watched the games from there. I typically spend a couple hours a week even asking people, like I might walk over here to the Thunderdome, hey, are you coming to the game tonight? Informing people that there's always a game, trying to get more people out and coming to enjoy this experience.
Awesome. And as a follow-up to that, when you're in contact or, when you're with all these other Gaucho sports fans, when you're interacting with fans of other teams, do you kind of see their way of rooting for teams as, wrong or incorrect?
Okay, I don't think there's one right way to root for a team, but there's one team that you're supposed to root for, and that's the Gauchos.
Awesome.
But no, I mean, the other sports fans, everyone builds their own culture around how to root in the proper way, and I'm a big fan of the way we do it here.
Great. The next thing I wanted to ask you was, do you have any favorite players on this team, and, what do these players mean to you personally?
Miro, number one. He's one of my favorite players right there. Him, Zion. What they mean to me, they mean absolute just winning, bro. It's super fun to just watch them out there on the court.
Great. I just have a few more questions for you. One of them being, was this trend of attending games and, being a really great participant at games something that's been instilled in you, like from birth or as a young child?
Yeah, I mean, so I grew up in Southern California, and I grew up not following the most obvious teams that you would think of a Southern California child. My parents are both from Ohio, meaning I was a Cleveland sports fan. So I grew up liking the Browns, still do, the Guardians for baseball, which, instilled in me, a love for a team that was never the best, okay? And so it always led me to come back to watching the games and supporting them year in, year out. So I think I grew up loving teams and loving sports. It was always a thing I'd watch with my family and going to sporting events. It was never as common as now being in college. They're super accessible here. But definitely like the culture started from a young age.
Great. Do you think that, being at this games and being part of this sporting community has helped you form communities and bonds kind of outside of the Thunderdome?
Oh, for sure. So, like I said, growing up, basketball is never one of the sports I watched heavily. It was always hockey, baseball, football. But coming here, I've learned a lot about basketball, met friends that I've played basketball with outside, like after class and whatnot. And I've met so many people that now share an interest in not only watching college basketball, but also we go and watch, the NBA games together. So it definitely has helped me find new people and new hobbies.
Great. And then just the last few, do you find these games to kind of be a place of worship?
I think definitely sporting is a form of worship. I think specifically for the players, it's a place of worship. I think each of them, like the ones with a really strong devotion to the game, the ones that eat, sleep, and breathe their sport, it is a place of worship for them. It's a place for them to show off their hard work. On the fan side of it, maybe a little less of worship and more just support, but definitely for the players, I'd say it's a place of worship.
Great. And then, why do you find it so important to have strong emotional attachments to teams and players here at UCSB?
I think it gives you just a sense of staying grounded. Sports in all facets give you a way to stay grounded. And having such a strong support, like I said earlier, to the school really just gives you that spirit and a love for the school.
Great. And then my last question, do you view sports fandom as a religion?
I think sports fandom itself can be seen as a religion, yes. Each team follows their own traditions. They have their ways of celebrating different wins and, mourning in the losses. And I think it is a form of religion, the way that you show up. Every day there's a game. You watch your team, you know the players, you learn the insides and outs. I think it can be seen as a form of religion that is very therapeutic for people. It's how they get through their life, like for football, for example. Football Sunday, you look forward to it, There's a way you could see that as a holy day, a day of rest to watch your teams play. So I think there is an aspect of it, yeah. Okay.
The second person I wanted to interview is a really good friend of mine, a KCSB sports reporter, and a huge Gaucho basketball fan, Braden Irvin. Now, Braden is a third-year student at UC Santa Barbara who has been watching and following the Gauchos very often over his tenure as a UCSB Gaucho himself. He has formed certain allegiances to players and the teams that have developed over time, over the last 3 years. And I chose to interview him because of his devotion of being a student sports reporter and spending several hours each week dedicated to following and watching the games his team plays in.
So it's like, what benefit do you think you get out of a strong devotion, being a big Gaucho basketball fan?
Well, I'll say a couple different things. I think it's just fun to watch the games. I think it's fun to have something to care about. I think that's a huge part of why I like sports to begin with. I think you always hear people be like, get a hobby, and it's one of my biggest hobbies. It's something I really think I find enjoyment out of. When it's Sunday, I love watching football. During the week, when it comes last year when all the games were on Thursdays, when it would come to Thursday, I was like, I know that this is the start to my weekend. I can relax, or not necessarily relax, because a lot of times we'd be on the call.
Yeah.
But have something that I really like to do. So I think the biggest thing for me is having a hobby and time that I can spend to honestly largely explore who I am as a person. I think that's a huge part of hobbies, is getting to meet new people, but then with that, getting to find out who you are in these new settings that might be uncomfortable.
All right, Braden, so the next thing that I wanted to ask you was, on the UCSB men's basketball team, do you have any favorite players, and, what do these players mean to you personally?
I'll say probably my favorite player is Jason Fontenette. I'll always be a Jason Fontenette defender. I think for me, I liked his story of being a freshman, coming off the bench, and starting to get minutes. Sometimes when I watch sports, you choose a my player in my head that I have no control over, and so I think he's my chosen player. That we started at the same time, both freshmen our first year. No, obviously we're freshmen our first years, but yeah, freshmen at the same time, and then watching his progression the next year was super exciting. Yeah, I don't know. I think I want to see him continue his career as a Gaucho. Me too. So I don't know. I think that's it. Just what does it mean to me though? What does his presence on the team mean to me? I don't know. It's a tough question. I feel I don't know. Seeing his success is in a way and growth is symbolic of how I feel I grow, from freshman to senior year or to sophomore year. I'd hope to feel you make that step forward to being an adult. You go freshman year, you're living in the dorms. Sophomore year, now I'm cooking my own meals. I'm living in Isla Vista. So I think that kind of thing of watching a player and then pulling parts of their life to relate to yours, for me just has been, it's something, I don't know, I just like to do it. I like to do that.
Great. And I'm just going to throw a few quick questions at you. So, was this trend of, attending games like you do with Gaucho games now, and just being a fan of teams and players, a fan of Jason Fontenette, was that something that was kind of instilled from you from birth or a really young age? I know you said you were a sports fan for a long time.
Yeah, so I'll say, like I said, my mom never let me play tackle football, but I was also a little scared to do it anyway, so I was kind of grateful for that. I don't know. I was never really super. I wasn't very athletic.
Do you think this community, being a Gaucho basketball fan, has helped you form any bonds or extra communities outside of attending these games?
Absolutely. I would say that's probably one of my favorite parts of watching sports. I think for me, coming into school, I was a huge sports fan. I was hoping that I would kind of open up some new avenues, and that's part of the reason I joined KCSB Sports. And I met a bunch of great people. Our lovely director here, director. What a guy. And Charlie, Carlo, a bunch of other people from the team. Now I can call my friends. It's great to have these guys and have such common interests with them. And yeah, it started off like a shared love for sports, for Gaucho basketball especially. And yeah, it led to a lot of great things. So totally. I love it.
Yeah, and this kind of leads me into the more religion-focused part of my questions. But do you find these Gaucho games, just seeing after everything that we've learned about both of us being huge fans of this Gauchos team, huge fans of specific players, do you find these games to be a place of worship?
I have to be honest, not really. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a place of worship. It's a place where I can come together with my friends. It's a place where I can enjoy an evening. I don't know. I think I kind of equate it. I hear when people get to their late 30s, I know, a scary number, but people go to bars, be regulars at bars, and that's how they meet people, get to know people, find people in their community. And I think that's how getting into sports, at least at UCSB, started for me. It started as a way to expand my network socially, and of course it comes with a lot of love and genuine passion for the team. But, I wouldn't say necessarily I see it as a place of worship. I talked about thinking about the team. It's not something that, I miss a game and I'm kind of bummed out about it, but I feel like that's more than anything for the relationships I've built around the team than the, practice like it would be like a religion. It's more the people involved than anything.
I like that. And that kind of takes me into my last question, but, do you view sports fandom as a potential religion, or do you think the two are separate from each other?
I wouldn't say they're entirely separate from each other. I think that, like I said, there's definitely parallels there. I think, especially if you really, that Bills Mafia, they break those tables. Yeah. So, no, I wouldn't necessarily say a religion, but I would say it can really lead to a lot of different things in your life. I know for me, depending on what season it is, if it's football season, the Chargers game is on no matter what if it's on. I'm gonna watch that game. And I see how that's definitely very ritualistic for myself. Yeah. And a lot of times it can lead to either I'm in a good mood or I'm in a bad mood. But I don't know. I don't know that I would necessarily say there's a level of worship to it for me. There is a lot that goes on behind the scenes of just watching a game, though, that I would say I see these parallels too. So, I don't know, to put it succinctly, I would say no, that not to me necessarily a religion, but I definitely feel the ritualistic aspect is honestly really positive in my life and has helped me build a lot of different relationships and built out a community like I see a lot of religions doing for people.
Got it. So, kind of to wrap up, would you say that sports fandom can be seen as more like ritualistic type of stuff, as a way to form communities, but not really going so far as it being a religion?
I think it doesn't go quite as far because I wouldn't necessarily say it has this level of a belief system. You root for a team, but when the season's over, to me the season's over. You get to watch whatever happens during the off season, but for me there's a level of being able to turn off this thing, and it's not necessarily ingrained into my soul where I feel like a belief system would be, but it's pretty darn close. I would say it's one of the closest things to a belief system outside of a genuine religion in my life.
So to conclude, from these discussions, we do get differing answers. However, both Evan and Braden both agree that this Gaucho fan community has helped them form further communities outside of just congregating at sports games, and along with putting players and teams on a pedestal, similarly to how religious members do. However, from these answers, while the parallels are evident between sports fandom and religion, there are a few distinctions to be made. As Braden mentioned, sports seasons do come to an end, unfortunately. There is less year-round worship for certain sports teams with an ability to kind of turn off that side and devotion when needed. It's not always with you, unlike religion, which is regularly always occurring and present in most people's everyday lives, if you are religious. Additionally, Braden and Evan are both rather inclusive. Both believe that there is no one central way to be a fan. However, they believe their personal correct way of supporting the Gauchos is the best. And lastly, players and teams are not worshipped and seen as all-powerful beings in a serious manner that religious figures are. Many times these religious figures are seen as figures that need to be put up on a pedestal and put above normal humans, but a lot of these athletes are just figures that are respected, but are seen as people that are relatable and fun. So overall, to wrap up, while the similarities are evident between sports fandom and religion, it's clear that we cannot yet prove that sports fandom in and of itself is a religion, because a lot of this fan support we can see is rooted in having fun and being entertained, as opposed to focusing for meaning beyond the material world. And many fans will, support players who come in and out and are unfortunately replaced eventually. And religion, on the other hand, supports figures who will kind of last forever and cannot really be replaced. So overall, sports fandom does mimic a lot of aspects of religion, like rituals, forming identity, and showing passion, but it's not a belief system about the divine or moral order that helps others seek guidance in life.